Welcome back to another episode of the USL show. Listen, we're stoked to be here. We have our first finals of the season or of the men's season. Well, that's not even true. League Two exists. Of the professional season, we got there eventually. We have quarterfinals underway, which at the beginning of the season seems like very typical people that you would expect. But boy, was it weird getting there. And people are mad because the all league rosters have come out, and frankly, it doesn't matter. There, I said it. Your favorite player isn't as good as you think they are. Shut up. All right. Anyway, so welcome back. And look, there was a lot of stuff that happened this last week. And someone we didn't get a chat to last week. John, how you doing, man?
Yeah, doing well. Happy to be back. A lot to discuss. A lot of fun, exciting, controversial games this weekend.
Controversial to say the least. Alan, how you doing?
Uh, doing all right. Doing all right. I think right now I am living my life similarly to Tampa Bay, where you are barely surviving but somehow getting through anyway. You're right. It is like familiar destinations, but a wild journey getting there. It's like flying from San Diego to Atlanta, but going from here to Seattle to Minneapolis, back down to Atlanta. So we I mean, it's USL, right? Like, we expect the unexpected chaos, and so up and down USL League One and Championship, those games provided exactly what we want, right? And now we can go on Twitter and scream about things that uh, either calls blown for us or calls blown against us. But yeah, the team of the week thing, I mean, I'm just glad they have like almost as many West Coast players as East Coast players this time. So like,
First time ever.
progress for us Western Conference folks. It's progress.
They really should go to an all West, all East at this point. There's just no point in doing all league, especially when not everybody plays each other. But whatever. I mean, that's why League One.
That would require people staying up late to watch Western Conference teams to create an all West 11.
Ew.
Yeah, I mean, look, all I'm saying is that, listen, we got a League One show a couple weeks ago, and they still came out with the all USL League One team. So people can fake it till they sort of make it, or at least fake it. So it happens. But look, I want to start off with League One because we got there, and it's Tormenta versus Chattanooga Red Wolves, which to start the season, no one had that. To end the season, no one had that. In the middle of the season, you thought chaos maybe could happen, and then League One decided to League One, and in the most interesting 1-0 matches I've probably ever watched, strangely enough. I want to start off with, just because Gio isn't here, and if he hops on later, I don't want to make him rip off the wound once again. I do want to start off with Tormenta because Tormenta, a lot of us picked Tormenta because they're one of the few teams that were not afraid of going into Greenville. Probably the only team not afraid to go into Greenville. And they looked good. Greenville was kind of knocking on the door, but never had a real chance along the way. It was a very interesting matchup, and it always comes down to one mistake, right? 42nd minute, a weird pass with not enough, oomph on it, and a player that didn't step to gets intercepted, and a little bit of sloppy defending as people try to recover, and a really nice finish, and that's all it took. Tormenta gets the 1-0 win.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about that game, you could look at the stat sheet where Greenville more than doubled the shots that Tormenta put up, but they weren't really getting those high quality chances like you mentioned. And to kind of cite, I think, our favorite center back pair in League One with Phelps and Dengler, they're a big reason why this team consistently controls the chances that they're allowing, why they're such an elite defense at this level. they did the thing in the press where 42nd, 43rd minute, whatever it was, they had a midfielder pop up from their 4-4-2-ish shape, get that interception, and it just took one moment where Keziah Sterling had a look on goal. It's kind of classic playoff soccer where you can rely on a really strong defense, get that moment with a star forward, and you're suddenly going to the final.
Yeah, and it was like the goal they scored was just as a little bit, just as much about chaos as it was like controlled buildup, right? Like you've seen this time and time again where you kind of just check out for a moment, right? Like any other time of the year that forward pass is not that big of a deal. It goes to the six puts it back to the center back, everything's hunky dory. But it just takes a guy falling asleep and a offensive player to really read the play well, and not take it off, and that's essentially the difference. Yeah, John, I with the not quality shots, all I have to do is watch the highlights back, and you'll see that some of the shots that they're highlighting for Greenville Triumph are not really even shots; they're just kind of like hope and a prayer that something happens. There's the one where it kind of gets spilled a little bit, but that's just like a hopeful ball into a dangerous area, right? It's almost like hockey where you're just like, I'm going to put the puck on net and hope something good happens, as opposed to necessarily like a build up or getting the ball into a dangerous area with control. It was just kind of hopes and prayers. And, that's not going to get you across the line, right? That's going to put you in a position where you're hoping and praying. But good on Tormenta for getting a really good road win. Like that's something we haven't seen consistently in League One, right? It was early bit was like you pick the home team because they're going to win. So good on Tormenta, and foreshadowing what's going to happen later. But good on Tormenta for really putting together a really nice win on the road.
Yeah, Tormenta was the one team that was always the caveat, though. Tormenta was the one team that always went away. You just prayed to God that they didn't play at home. Like if it was Tormenta playing in Northern Colorado, they would have went undefeated because nowhere was home. And so Tormenta was the one team that you really circled. The thing with Tormenta, and I want Tormenta fans who listen to this, because we do have a ton of awesome Tormenta fans that do listen, and we appreciate that. It's going to sound like I'm nitpicking Greenville and saying I'm disappointed in Greenville more than I am proud of Tormenta, but I'm really not, because the things that we're nitpicking Greenville is basically talking about how near perfectly Tormenta played. They slowed the game down when they needed. Tormenta made those kind of chippy fouls that didn't brandish cards, or sometimes, kind of rode that line, slowed the game down, didn't allow Greenville to get at a blistering pace to catch anybody off guard, and they completely shut down the game. There was a moment that there was a kind of a searching long ball that Jay Keegan gets on the end of and just kind of pushes it wide, that, like you mentioned, if it was middle of the season, no pressure on the line, I think he finishes that ball. But it was really the one chance that Greenville got all night. There was one play where the Tormenta keeper, who I'm blanking off the top of my head, so sorry, he makes a save to his left. And it's a nice save, don't get me wrong, but that's a save you expect most USL League One or Championship or even a lot of League Two keepers to make. And that just really shows, like John said, like Phelps and Dangler, how good they played. Because when you're so solid in the middle, it pushes everything out wide. And when your fullbacks know the ball is coming to them, then they can defend. And it just becomes full team defense with no real threat of losing.
TJ Bush in net, who hasn't allowed more than one
Thank
goal in any game since early September.
Ridiculous. Christensen at the beginning of the game made a really nice save for Greenville, by the way. Greenville could have very been down pretty early, but there was a save that he had that pushed the ball over the bar. It looked like he was a little bit off his line, not awfully enough to be like, oh, he's out of position, but he's kind of where he has to be. It's a good shot coming in. He goes up, tips it over the bar. Good on him. He also goes up and plays a decent brand of midfield at the very end of the game. Actually, he looked pretty good for a keeper trying to play midfield to try to tie the game. I was a little bit impressed. But yeah, Tormenta, what a win. But unless anybody else has anything on this match, there was another match that controversy struck at Memorial Stadium, and it was bad. It was really bad. Look, so for people who didn't watch, Richmond comes in. They are the Supporter Shield or regular season champions, whatever they want to call it. Same thing, which in League One truly is, in my opinion, the actual champions because they played everybody like 3 times. They were by and large the best team. They're my true champions, whatever. And they come in. There is a moment that looks like it's a clear penalty, clear as day penalty, not given. And Richmond looked a little rattled from then on. From there, it gets a little bit cagey until I think the 39th minute, and the Red Wolves go down a man. And from there, it is just Chattanooga doing their thing. They defend a little bit, and then they get a breakaway. And boy, are they fast on that counterattack. And finally, at the end of the match, it catches up to Richmond, who just could not find that goal, even though at one point it looked like they got a goal that was taken off the board. And Chattanooga gets another opportunity. They got a couple of these breakaway opportunities, puts into the back of the net, 1-0 win. Your regular season champs out.
I struggle with games like this where there is one of those pivotal incidents where, yes, it was a big deal that that Richmond didn't get the penalty, but you had so much of the game left to play. You're up a man for 60 minutes. You win the possession battle 60-40. At a certain point, the penalty incident only goes so far in a game where you had the edge. I thought Chattanooga looked a little bit shaky in terms of their structure in the midfield defensively. This is a Kickers team that, as you mentioned, was dominant in the regular season. It's on them at a certain point if they can't go and do the thing. And credit to the Red Wolves. Mensigan was a threat in transition throughout this one, and he deservedly got that winner. But it's unlucky for the Kickers, but you got to go do the thing.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that I've talked about with on Two Balls and a Mic, and even on Orange and Black, is that like you have to be so good that you overcome a missed call, right? Like just to expect a referee to make 0 mistakes in a game is like asking a lot, right? Like we know pro refs, like these aren't, they're doing the same thing that the players are doing, right? You're trying to work your way up, so you're going to get some inexperience, you're going to get some bad calls, right? That's just the reality of the game, that you have to be able to be good enough to overcome those bad calls, right? And we heard this from some of our coaches as well this season. And Richmond had that that offside moment that could have been in, so it felt very much like the Red Wolves, once they get that red card, are like defend, and like what do we have to lose at this point, right? Like it felt like maybe they were a little bit looser. Richmond's obviously under the pressure, and in a game of soccer, like your one goal is a huge difference, right? And I thought that the red card was going to be enough to really put the Kickers in a position to really take it to Chattanooga, but maybe it hurt them in a way where Chattanooga becomes more defensive and sits back even more because now they're having to defend with 10 men. And we've seen this with teams too, right? You expect them to be dominant, but you go down a man, you become more defensive, you're more counterattacking, and it makes it harder for teams to break you down. So they get frustrated, they push more, and now you're open for a counterattack.
See, to that point, and I'm agreeing with you. Chattanooga was one of the teams this year that looked better when they went down a man, because so many times Chattanooga would get caught out because they are so attacking. They look so good on the attack that they forget that they have a defense. And they're just like, well, our center backs are just going to come up here, play striker, no big deal. And then they'd suddenly forget, oh, it's suddenly a 3-on-1 with our goalkeeper. Let's just pray he has it. They never do. And it was one of those situations that Richmond went down or went up a man against the worst team they could have. And I want to push back just a little bit on the missed call, just because I know that they went up for that amount of time and they should have. But like I said, Chattanooga is one of the teams that were better going down a man. Their system just seems to work in that way. Why? I don't really know. I haven't gotten that deep into the film, I'll be honest. Maybe League One review Brandon Mays could tell me. Or John, maybe you as well. But I with the penalty call, this isn't like a ticky-tacky on the edge of the box, the ref didn't maybe want to call it. I mean, it was a clear swipe at the leg. That is as blatant as it gets. Even if the center ref doesn't see it, the AR doesn't see it, no one sees it, no one wants to call it. I understand that's a playoff game and you don't want to be the one to call a penalty, but the moment that goal is missed, that penalty is missed, it's in Richmond's mind. And then they get the goal that turns out to be offsides. And at that point, the mentality has to be everything's going against us. It just felt like it was a lot of compiling issues that turned into a loss.
Yeah, the penalty call, like, it's one of those, especially with some of the other games this weekend, like that was probably one of the most clear penalties that happened that weren't called. I mean, this one wasn't called, but like if I stacked all of these and said which one of these was given a penalty and which one of these was like waved off, I think people would get it wrong, right? Because there were some that were way less than this that were given, and I'm sure we'll get to that as well. And then on the other side too, like, I mean, the kickers are also beat by just this absolutely wonder goal, right? It's not like a guy, maybe is a step too late to close a guy down, and that's the difference, right? Like, this was just an amazing, amazing strike that they got beat by. And in a normal game, like, you tip your cap and be like, you got us, but we've already scored two, right? We got the penalty, we got the one that maybe was, it was definitely offside on this one, I think. Maybe it's hard to tell because it was a headed and whatever, but like, you get one of those two, and now it's like, okay, you tied it up on a wonder goal. Let's solve this in extra time. It just happened that those ones didn't go in for the kickers, and sometimes you get beat by a really nice individual moment, and you got to tip your cap to Red Wolves for playing strong, and then just absolutely, Metzingen, just, I mean, it's a stunner of a goal, right? Like, goal of the week nominee type of goal. So like, that's how crushing soccer unfortunately can be, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and unless, John, you have anything else on this match, this kind of leads straight into the finals, right? You have two teams that are one team's definitely hot. Tormenta is definitely hot. We're leaving both Red Wolves matches just going like, meh, Chattanooga exists. My biggest look out for, if Bolt doesn't have his Cash App printed on the back of his jersey, I'm mad. It's a horribly missed opportunity. But this is truly, I think, one of the most interesting matchups because you have one of the sexiest attacking teams in all of the USL, League One, or Championship going against who I boldly said, and I got pushed back on it, whatever, I'll say it again, the best center back pairing in all of the USL. And I understand that San Antonio and other teams have better players, but there is no two center backs that work better together than Dangler and Phelps, in my opinion. And you're going against those two different mindsets, and I'm stoked.
It's going to be a really exciting game. I think from an objective perspective, you have to think Tormenta are the favorite in this one. They were, for my eyes, the better team in the regular season. You talk about that center back pairing, the way that they've defended over the past couple of months. They're going to be really hard to beat. But at the same time, we've mentioned, Kayla, you made the specific point about how this Red Wolves team, you pin them up against a wall and suddenly they just start to play better. And there's a real scenario where this thing is tight at the end. It's been a sort of low tempo defensive battle, and you get something in transition from Mensingen. You get a moment where Villalobos plays the ball over the top and they get something going that turns into the championship winning moment of magic. So, I mean, not to spoil, but I have the Red Wolves winning this one just because I think the game is going to play out at a tempo that favors them, possibly.
Interesting. You got anything on this, Alan?
I mean, I think I've been like wrong on League One all season long, so like, why stop now? It is. I've picked against Tormenta a lot, I think, this season, and probably almost every time it's come back and bit me like an angry goose when I have bread in my hand. So, like, yeah. But I do think this is going to be a fun one because, I mean, there is no quit in that Chattanooga Red Wolves team. And as much as, I would like to see them not be successful based on the history of things, I do think they're going to put together a really good game against Tormenta. And yeah, I think people are going to be treated to chaos in soccer form. And yeah, I'm excited to check this one out. I guess if John's going to give his pick, I'm going to go against John, which is also not smart. So I'm like 2 for 2 on done moves. Just to create chaos, I picked Tormenta to win. I didn't lock it because there's a surprise coming for that one. But I do think it's going to be enjoyable. If you haven't watched USO League One, like, check it out. It's worth it. And, there's probably going to be a couple guys from this game who you might want to have your team take a look at.
For me personally, Sterling is number one on that list. Dude's incredible. For Tormenta, they're number 9. It's just incredible. He is so much fun to watch, and I'm going to go ahead and tip my hand because we've all kind of done it. I am locking Tormenta. I will admit I'm pretty mad that this is on a Sunday because it is close enough to me that I could have driven down on a Saturday and went and watched, but it's on a Sunday and I don't get days off. So thank you, internship. So I can't pull that. But anyway, I just feel like this is a match where this isn't as simple. We kind of I made it out to be as Tormenta's going to defend, and they're just going to win. Tormenta still has really good attacking pieces. They are really fun to watch on the attack. Their build-up is really, really fun, and their strikers are clinical. They're a really, really good team on the attack. It just happens to be that their defense is incredible. And I have a really... I just think that this is going to be a situation where Tormenta is going to absorb the crap out of pressure, and Chattanooga is going to get caught too far forward. Tormenta gets a counterattack, and they're going to win, especially at home. I think they're going to have the momentum, and it's just not in Chattanooga's nature unless they're down a man to sit back and defend it all, even if they're away from home. And if they do decide to sit back and defend, I still feel like that favors Tormenta because unless they're down a man, Chattanooga just looks shaky in the defense. This one just feels like Tormenta is going to do the first ever USL double with League One and W League.
So you're advocating for Red Wolves to put in like some random guy and just like 2-foot tackle somebody in like the first minute to go down a man, and then they're like
if the player can get sent off for a ton of reasons. It doesn't necessarily have to be an injury or going 2-footed. Now, full WWE, he goes off screen and goes, just gives Bolt like a Batista bomb, gives him the people's elbow, gets sent off. They're down to 10 men. Bolt's in the hospital. What do? They lost their Juju and their up a man. Tormenta's screwed.
That would not be the weirdest thing I've seen at a sporting event. I saw a adult league baseball team balk in a run to tie it up.
Was Joe Madden the manager?
Because they didn't play all of their players, and so they were going to lose by default if they didn't play everybody. And someone pointed it out early, and so they put in a pitcher to drop the ball 3 times to balk in a run. Like they hit the guy with the like threw at the guy to hit him. And then the second guy didn't realize if you swung, it's a strike anyway, even if it hits you. And so he gets hit and he's on first base, and they balk the run around and they tie it up to end up going to the bottom of the 9th. So like, I'm all for it. Like it's as simple as like, just walk onto the field, take your shirt off, get yellow carded, put it back on, take your shirt off, get red carded. And now you're like, I do think there are like less violent means to get sent off in a game if that's what you're hoping for. But Kaylor, I do. I can't advocate for violence, but I can advocate for that chaos, and that might be the most interesting tactical approach that would make John's job even more challenging. It's like intentionally walking a run in to not give up a grand slam kind of deal. So I'm for it, and let's let chaos reign.
Humor me for a second. You remember the reversible kits that Ford Masson had?
Yes.
So player takes his shirt off already, and then he puts it back on. The ref is like, yellow card. The guy says, okay. He takes the shirt off again, reverses it. It's one of the reversible kits. The other side is the same thing, but it's the Cash App on the back where the name is, and he walks off.
And that's how we fund stadiums in the future.
Oh man. Yeah, really though, this one just feels like Tormenta to me. Red Wolves is a team that can break down this defense, but to me it just feels like a game that they're going to get caught up trying to score. They get caught out like they have so many times this year, and Tormenta is going to counterattack their way to a victory. But that's just me. Anybody has anything else?
And nothing else happened this weekend, so
nothing else happened. That's the show. Nothing controversial happened. Actually, the least we might as well start off with the least controversial game probably of the entire weekend, and that is the fact that San Antonio hates fun and decided to score on Oakland. Screw you guys. I was really looking forward to like 500 minutes without conceding a goal, but whatever, you had to be the best team in the league, yada, 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 mentality monsters. God, you're losers. Listen, they go up super early, like 2 minutes in. I had not even turned on the stream yet. They score, and then Oakland looks pretty good. They look like they might find their way in. It looked like they were starting to build some momentum, and San Antonio decides that that's not fun anymore, and they decide to put in 2 more goals for the heck of it because, again, they hate fun. San Antonio, once again, proving why they are the best team in the league.
I'd kind of push back on the whole Oakland looking good thing. Like, they were dominating possession. They were loosely around the box, but I can't really point to any concrete chances that they had. It's much as we talked about with that Tormenta performance, where there's this level of comfort that you have if you're San Antonio. You can sit back in your defensive back five. You can deal with the fact that PC goes down hurt, and you're so comfortable in what you're doing systematically that it doesn't matter what the Roots are throwing at you. It just felt for me like a matter of time before you sprung a counterattack and you got a goal to really seal the thing. It was a classic San Antonio performance in so many ways. It was well managed by Alan Marcina. I think the finish from Samuel Denaran in that second minute goal deserves a shout. Really clinical there. Took advantage of everything that is flawed about the Roots defense. It's kind of what you expected if you are basing your playoff thoughts on what San Antonio did in the regular season.
I mean, there's that like set piece in the 32nd minute that I think could have changed the complexion of the game a little bit if Oakland puts that one in. And maybe it's just like Oakland just needs to pretend they're playing San Diego every week, because I think if that's San Diego, that goal goes in like 3 times and they get 3 goals from that set piece for some reason. I think kind of like Oakland lives on that edge of like, if things go perfectly, they get wins. When things don't go perfectly, like this is what happens, right? Like you have a couple of those shots that, Farr makes a really nice save in the 34th minute, right? In a normal Oakland match, though, that's what happens. But then when those go in, Oakland like plays with this fire in them that makes them a little bit dangerous. I do agree that a Adeniran goal was an interesting one. Jasper agrees. But the thing that's funny about that is like he can turn and shoot it with his right foot, but he like takes a moment. Oh boy! Oh no! Takes a moment and shoots it with his left.
Jasper's a Roots fan.
This is news.
Jasper is definitely a believer in possession stats and possession stats only.
Yeah, too bad Phil isn't here to rail against the stat sheet from this one.
Yeah, Jasper is not as convinced with XG. He feels like sample sizes are too small.
Yeah, I mean, look, like John said, this one felt like if it was in the regular season, it could have been, maybe things could have gone a little bit differently. But, I mean, San Antonio was rocking. I mean, that stadium looked awesome to be in. I'm a little bit jealous of all the people that were there. Oakland, I do think that they were kind of growing into the match, even though San Antonio was sitting in deep, and just kind of handling things well. The biggest thing that has been a weakness of Oakland all year long is that at times their midfield legitimately looked like one of the worst midfields in all of the USL. Their midfield can go from pretty good to horrible. And it looked like they started to put some passes together, starting to string some stuff together. Maybe not making plays, but at least look a little bit more fluid and not just, oh yeah, in practice we passed the ball once and we passed the ball again. I remember that now. It became more natural. But then San Antonio kind of saw that and caught it out and decided that that was no good and they hated that and scored, because that's, again, what they do.
And that second goal by Patino is just a really nice moment for him. Really nice touch, really nice shot. The second goal from him is even, I think, maybe even more impressive from the angle. But like, this has been like San Antonio is going to win 1-0. San Antonio is going to win 1-0. San Antonio is going to win 1-0. But I think what they showed is that, if you give them space and time, San Antonio can be just as, explosive as some of the other teams that we've seen score 2, 3, 4 goals in a game. Oakland's defense has not been great. But, San Antonio could have easily just defended and got out of this one with a 1-0 victory. And so I think I think it was important for them to put a couple goals in the back of the net because they got a really tough matchup coming up against a team that can score some goals.
Yeah, and speaking of, I mean, unless John, you have something else on this, this is, I now honestly, beginning of the season, you say Colorado Switchbacks are playing San Antonio in the USL Western Conference Finals. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. Midway through the season, and even towards the end of it, you're just like, are you a Colorado Springs fan thinking that? Because none of us were sold on Colorado Springs. And then kind of last week we said it. The Switchbacks decided that momentum is stupid and no one needs it anyway. How about we sell off our best player for a bunch of money? Suck it, losers. And that's kind of what they did. I mean, look, the Sacramento match itself, they played Sacramento Republic. It was exciting. It was a really exciting match. Roro Lopez, also known as Roro Rodriguez, according to one person on the USL preview show, gets his goal, 18th minute. Good finish, obviously. Roro Lopez, don't have to tell you that. And then it felt like, even though it was a bit of time that passed, it felt like it was close to an immediate response by Colorado Springs. It felt like they remembered, playoff game. We should probably score now. And then, listen, Mitchie just scores. And then he does the dang thing again in extra time. This one kind of went back and forth. But the real big changer here, just as John talked about in his tactics show today, Foster coming in really gave this this whole match a different vibe. And once it hit extra time, it didn't feel like Sacramento really had a chance. It really felt like this was Switchback's game.
Yeah, in many ways, the Sacramento team is kind of San Antonio light in the way that they try to defend with that back five, play you out, get that one goal. And I think the difference that we saw pretty starkly across these games is that San Antonio has so many talented forwards who can come up with the moment of magic. And that's really only Roro if you're thinking about what Sacramento does. The Switchbacks, meanwhile, have suddenly found this new life with just really basic 4-2-3-1. They're finding out how to liberate Michigalina without the distracting presence of Haji Berry in the mix. I think when they really turned into a more positive, almost 4-2-4 system, when they brought in Foster and added that additional bit of width, that was really the thing that put them over the top. But it was a really great performance from them. And sure, it was a home game. They've been stronger at home over the year, but I just liked a lot of what I saw. And I'm really interested to see what becomes of this matchup against San Antonio next week.
How do you not put sorry, I just gotta ask the question. How do you not put Mitchie on the pin?
Beyond me there.
Yeah, there's a really nice moment in that first goal where you just kind of see how the offensive attack really was pulling Sacramento's defense apart on that run. Like guys running weird diagonals, creating tons of space, not being able to track everybody. It was a really nice goal, a really nice moment. This is kind of, again, the Colorado Springs from the beginning of the season. I wouldn't say no one believed in Colorado Springs. I believe there's a former USL show host who lives in Pennsylvania who is like who fanboys Colorado Springs, the Bethlehem Steel of the West. But I mean, there is a pedigree there in the coaching staff that is really good, and I think sometimes we lose track of how important some of the coaching and tactical stuff is in turning seasons around in even mid-season or toward the end. With the Haji Berry thing, like, I mean, there is addition by subtraction, right? You have such a guy who has such soccer, what should I describe this as? Like gravitational pull, right? Like there's all of this attention, and sometimes your own teammates get sucked into that, right? Like you have this monster player, you got to give him the ball, you got to give him the ball, you got to give him the ball, and maybe it makes the team a little bit more one-dimensional. And then you sell him, and then you got to figure your life out without him. And instead of it being an answer with one other player, maybe it's an answer for 2 or 3 other guys that are now finding the space and the freedom, and kind of re-looking at how systems run. And there's a lot of respect for what Colorado Springs has done, and form is temporary, right? You're in a good run of form until you're not, and you're in a bad run of form until you're not. And Colorado Springs is for sure hit it at the right spot. And now you have, another really solid Western Conference matchup, that I think has the potential to be a pretty fun boxing match between styles and good defenses and really good keepers and offensive firepower.
Yeah.
Do we want to get into it with the?
I kind of do a little bit.
Yeah.
Listen, coming into this match, the quote is going to be thrown around about how San Antonio is not good, they're just efficient, which, again, Brendan, you're not listening to this, but there's a chance you are, and I want to say it. Have you seen their conversion stats? That is the opposite of efficient. If you're going to make a weird claim, back it up with something. San Antonio apparently not a good team. Colorado Springs proving to be a good team right now. And kind of to your point, Alan, we see this, for example, in football all the time, especially like the NFL, where star wide receiver goes down, suddenly the passing attack breaks open. Not if you watched Monday Night Football last night, because the Bengals suck again. I hate my life. But most of the time when a star receiver goes down, they start passing to everybody. Everybody starts getting the ball. And I'm trying to remember, but this is the first time in a while San Antonio's played Colorado Springs without Audrey Berry. And you think, well, maybe this makes more sense. They don't have to man mark or, even put 2 men on Audrey Berry. But now that they're starting to spread the ball out even more and getting more players touching the ball and seeing some really creative runs coming out of this team, maybe it adds a new wrinkle into Switchback's offense. Maybe. I don't know.
So these teams actually played in September, and Barry was gone.
Oh, was he? Or was he hurt at that point?
He was never actually hurt. He was just kind of in Egypt negotiating a contract, which is wild. But
that sounds like an injury to me.
They they were playing a different system than what they have ended up with in the playoffs, where it was a back 3, sort of the Barry setup without Barry at the top of it. They've refined things. They've added an extra body in the midfield. And I think that's going to be really key to them maintaining control, having the balance where Cam Lindley can do his thing creatively without the extra burden of having to be the man who slides over into the channel to mark what Adeniran is doing in transition, or having to cover it a Christian Pirano on the other side. So I think that's going to be important. So much of the improvement that we've seen in recent weeks has been at the defensive end, where for the middle 3-4 months of the season, this was one of the leakiest defenses in the USL. And I really can't point to exactly what the difference has been, but they have figured it out. They've got a settled back line. Jeff Caldwell's in good form after really struggling early in the year. So the Switchbacks have a lot going for them. But at the same time, I think it would be foolish to doubt what San Antonio is doing.
But they're not good.
Yes, well, just to comment on that, I feel like we give Brendan Burke too much flack. Like,
no,
he didn't mean it like that. It's bulletin board material, but
I'm amazed that the Colorado Springs PR posted it.
Yeah, that should have been edited.
So this is a very similar comment to one that Landon Donovan made last year. that was posted on not the team's PR person, but by some a-hole named Alan Underwood after an Orange County game, and he basically made a comment about like they play like they're the road team at home, and I would never want to do that. Like, I don't think they play. Basically, it's like I hate the way they play soccer. Is essentially what they said. And I think there's some validity to this argument if your philosophy of soccer is it must be free flowing, beautiful, like Manchester City-esque football. And when this is the detractors with like the Mourinho argument of it's not pretty, or the Italian style of soccer where it's like a perfect game of soccer is 0-0, right? That's the perfect game of soccer is nobody scores because goals come from mistakes. And I can understand that sentiment if the way that San Antonio plays, and your comment is, I don't want to play that way. That's not the way, that's not my philosophy of soccer. And I think that is a very valid argument. I think that argument gets spun in the, oh, well, you think we're bad at soccer, or you think we suck at soccer, or that, well, look at us, we win. It's like, yeah, like we're not making it like, I don't think Landon Donovan was making this argument. I'm not sure what Brendan Burke was getting at, but it's not saying like that's not a way to win soccer. It's just that's not the way they want to win soccer, and they want to be aggressive, and they want to be the aggressor, and they want to have possession. They don't want to sit back and defend like some away teams do in their own, like when they go on the road. So I do think it's bulletin board material, and I do think that it's a hard one too, right? Because if he comes out after a match and says the same thing and they lost, it's like he's complaining. If they won, it's like, well, it's like you won, you're a sore loser or a sore winner. Sometimes at least like these comments are better just be like, put it in an email and then don't hit send, or talk about it with your friends over a beer or wine or, hot tea. I don't know, but like this is something that's like, it's a headline. It's easy to attach onto, but I think it is a fun conversation to have when you have multiple philosophies of soccer in the USL, because it makes for really entertaining matchups, and it makes for really fun conversations about which style do you like, and how do you build your systems, and how do they react against other systems, right? This is what makes Oakland play well against San Diego. It's just a philosophy that leads to really fun approaches to soccer, and it gives John something to do apparently in all of the free time he has, is talk about all of these different approaches to soccer. But that's what makes it fun and beautiful, and as opposed to everyone must do 4-4-2, and you must have a tall striker and a short striker who's speedy. Like, we've been through that, and it's like we wanted to move past that. We want these different systems. It's just that when coaches advocate for one over the other, people are like, oh, you think my system's wrong. It's like, no, this is just the system I want to play, and I actually don't like that system. I don't want to coach it. So I love that conversation. I just would hope that we take the comments at the face value and be able to debate like what makes a good system versus you think my team sucks because you don't like my system, unless you're that team and you want to use it as motivation in a possible Western Conference final.
I want to jump back to something that you said, John, and we probably do need to run forward. But to me, I think I kind of know what the defensive change is for Colorado. And maybe I'm oversimplifying it. You watch a lot more matches than I do, obviously. But to me, it's simply going to that back four. A lot of times whenever I would watch Colorado Springs, that back three would get kind of spread apart because somebody goes up a little too far. Someone gets out a little bit too wide. They would get caught out on a really good diagonal ball off of, or get caught out on a diagonal run, and they just kind of split that open channel. And since they have gone to this two at the back, or, four at the back technically, but two at the back system, it feels like they cut out the diagonal ball a lot more than they used to. And that it felt like every time they got scored on, that was the thing. And from what I watched from San Antonio when they played Legion, that was a lot of the game, was a lot of those diagonal runs. Maybe not exactly a diagonal ball coming in, but a lot of those runs were being made, and I'd be really interested to see how those match up against each other.
The issue is that they were using a back four for a lot of those bad losses in the middle of the season with a lot of the same personnel that they've had now. And there are times where, because you've got Tristan Hodge, who's a natural center back at left back, and Sebastian Anderson, who's viable as a winger at right, they often end up in a back three by proxy. It's very complex how they are just quite fluid in what they're doing. And maybe you just chalk it down to they had a lot of injuries and a lot of inconsistency. So getting this consistent group for 4 or 5 weeks in a row has finally paid off for them.
For sure. Because we are running pretty long right now, we can go ahead and move on to the Eastern Conference. The first one I want to talk about should be a relatively quick conversation, considering the fact that the only part people are talking about is the last really 2 minutes of the game. And that is Memphis versus Tampa Bay. We talked about refereeing earlier, and oh boy, was this a doozy. Memphis, in my opinion, looks like they dominated for most of the match. They looked really, really good at home after the match gets delayed for a day. Downside of playing at a baseball stadium. On the other hand, shout out to the rain. The drought sucked lately, so good for Memphis. And Memphis looks really, really good. They get their penalty, and honestly, say what you want about the pen. Pen should never be saved. It's a good save. It was a good save. Go down to the other end. Tampa Bay gets a pen of their own. Some people were saying probably shouldn't have been a pen. And then when the pen's taken, it got posted into our Discord #ad. Being there. Tampa Bay had 4 people encroaching on the pen. It should have been retaken, but it wasn't. Tampa Bay wins 1-0 on pseudo penalties thing. I don't know.
No, I mean, you summed it up nicely. I think we shouldn't understate the fact that Memphis really dominated this game, especially in the first half. The Rowdies did not look up to it, and they made the right changes to settle things down and basically even it. They moved into more of a 4-4-2 shape where they were able to hold off Aaron Molloy and that awesome Memphis midfield to a certain degree. I thought the penalty call in favor of Memphis that ended up being a miss was pretty soft and kind of bizarre. And then you say what you will about the other one, but Leo Fernandez is never not going to convert on the spot. I mean, I don't really have a ton more to add to what you had to say there, Kaylor. Just an interesting game overall, and Rowdy's going to rowdy when it comes to playoff time.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is San Diego's favorite center referee would be the only one that would have made that first penalty call, I believe. Yeah. And yeah, maybe he did save us 30 minutes and gave us 1v1. And I think he put himself in a bad position calling the first one that probably wasn't. That when the second one happened that was very similar, like at that point you kind of have to call it, right? Like you put yourself into that position to have to make kind of a dodgy penalty decision. And Tampa Bay, to their credit, did everything they could to get that PK called. And that's what players do, right? You push to the edge of embellishment, and you put your body in a position to create fouls. And, that's really the difference. It was one good save and one good PK. But I do think Memphis is a little bit hard done with this loss. But kudos to them for having a really nice season. I'm sure a very disappointing end, but encourage Memphis fans to look back over the course of the season and think, and think about the success. Elton didn't want the game to go to OT. Must have had a fight to catch. I think really he had a meeting to debrief the San Diego match, and so he was like, I got an appointment to make and I can't be late, so I'll just call PKs. Why not? What does he got to lose? He's probably not going to get in trouble. And probably, actually, I think he's hosting the finals.
This is one of those matches. I said it last week that Detroit City kind of gave the blueprint of beating Memphis. And don't get me wrong, in the first half, Memphis, they were dominating, no doubt. Second half, Tampa Bay looks more up to it, but they were just defending the crap out of the ball. They were doing a great job. And I said it with Detroit City that they kind of gave that blueprint: defend, defend, defend. Like, just do well in defense. Steal the game in the last 10 minutes. That was Detroit City's game plan going in. It almost worked. It almost worked last week for Detroit City. Tampa Bay, in their own way, kind of replicates the same thing. Gets a bit of a lucky penalty call. To be fair, so did Memphis. You kind of look at it and you say Memphis fans feel a little hard done by. Tampa Bay could be having the same conversation right now. Really, fans who of Memphis and Tampa Bay should probably feel a little hard done by. All the rest of us watching, I mean, I'm just glad I watched it because, boy, it wasn't good, but it was entertaining, and that's all you ask for in the USL.
I feel hard done by the fact that no one could watch for the first 15 to 20 minutes because ESPN Plus got all messy with the rain delay.
Yeah, that is something to be a little bit upset about. I think shout out to Elton for not calling any pins. He knew that was kind of part of it, I think. He knew that the stream was down and was like, I can't call any pins now. There was probably something we didn't see in the first 15, 20 minutes. And so he was like, I better make up for it now that people are watching. So shout out to him for that, being very well aware. Jake Edwards probably called it in and was like, hey, man, you know those 2 calls you didn't call? We got you now. Go do your thing, man. Yeah, that was ridiculous. Shout out to the USL, though, for unlocking the YouTube link, sending us back to 2016 where we watched everything on YouTube, the golden days of the USL. For the people who just experienced YouTube USL for the first time, welcome to our culture. That's the way things should be done.
This isn't an ASL Live podcast. Come on now. Whatever it was called. Worst streaming service in the history of the world.
It's awful.
I've experienced Cujo, I think that's what it's called. That was also
My Cujo TV or whatever. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Open Cup classic.
And then lastly, it was probably for most people the match of the weekend, I think. And it was Pitt versus Louisville City. Pittsburgh goes up 2-0. And Pittsburgh looked good. You really thought that Bob Lilly was going to Bob Lilly. And then in the second half, he comes out and he's still Robert, baby. We're parking the bus because that works for everybody in the playoffs. Concedes 2 goals. Cameron Lancaster comes on, bags his goal, screws off. And then they go to extra time where Keza is a playoff hero, apparently. But no, not so fast, my friend. It was apparently offsides, allegedly. Goes all the way to penalties. And all it takes is 1 save. And that's it. Louisville City, Tampa Bay in the Eastern Conference Finals, because who didn't have that one coming into this season?
This was another one where I think it was some really astute managing on the part of Danny Cruz that corrected what was going wrong for Louisville, got them back into it, and led to what happened in the shootout. It was that halftime inflection point where the back 3 was just leaving them too unshielded in the midfield. He knew that they needed an extra body in there. He switched into more of a 4-2-3-1. And yes, the Riverhounds scored pretty immediately out of the half. It was more of a defensive mistake than anything. But from there, Louisville was really able to possess. They took control of the game. Elijah Winder coming on after his brother had really stolen the spotlight from him for the entirety of the season was fantastic. He really created both of the goals in tandem with Lancaster. Then Lancaster gets hurt, and they sort of go into this kind of proto back three, back four-ish thing with Oscar Jimenez on the right. Every decision that Cruz made ended up paying off in this thing. And yes, you can point to that Kizza decision being pretty awful. And Pittsburgh certainly had their chances, but you can't decide to sit in against this Louisville team and park the bus. They are too good. They have too many talented players, even with the injuries. It was really a poorly managed game on Lily's part, and an exciting one for Louisville, just to make one more point, in that the guys who did the job for them were Elijah Winder, a teenager from the academy. Carlos Mogel got the winning penalty. I mean, Danny Foundas in goal. These are the young players that Louisville has been developing and bringing in a very unique way for this league that you're not seeing elsewhere, that having that developmental pipeline is really paying off.
I said it. Don't mean to cut you off, Alan. I said it pre-show. You can be mad if you're Pittsburgh about the offsides. I'm saying it on purpose now. Shut up, Andy. Next thing, like I said, next thing you're going to tell me is that it's not Walmart's or it's not Target's. Don't care. And listen, yeah, the offside was bad. I get it. But like John said, you don't park the bus against Lou City. You don't park the bus really against anybody in the playoffs. Everybody is so good. And if you park the bus, this is what happens. And you can be mad about the extra time goal, about not being allowed. Pettiness me. You're going through off of a ref being concussed and not knowing what state he was in. Whatever, that's me being a little bit petty, but also it should never have gotten to that point. And if you're a Pittsburgh player or a fan saying, well, you're just mad because you're a Legion fan, I said the same thing to Legion last week. I didn't care about last week's reffing decision because Legion should never been in that position because they parked the freaking bus. Pittsburgh was on the front foot the entire time until they decided to slam on the brakes. And boy, did they hit a brick wall. And it is what it is. You can't blow a 2-goal lead.
Yeah, I think this one's tough. Because I think if you would have said, hey, Pittsburgh is up by 2 goals in the final 10 minutes, like everyone's like, yeah, Pittsburgh's winning that game. Like Pittsburgh's winning that game, right? Like the history has proved that they're, defensively stout. They don't like to give up tons of goals. Although some of the multi-goals, I think Tulsa and New York Baby Bulls are the only non-playoff team to score more than 2 against them. So they can give up goals, but like typically you would think Pittsburgh in the playoffs with 20 minutes to go up 2, they're probably winning that match. Like
Free Dan
9
Kelly.
times out of 10. You know what I mean? Like, but they do, secede. I know that possessions is kind of a wonky stat, but they're at 41% after the first half, and then they're hanging out around 30%. And, that's just a recipe for disaster against any team, particularly Louisville at home. So this is one of those times where, you outthink the room a little bit, and, you want to trust your players, but you also like want to put Lou City on their back foot occasionally. And they prove that when they did that, they can do a good job. It's unfortunate Pittsburgh couldn't see this one over the line. So we didn't have a Lou City versus Tampa Bay matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals, but here we are. The offside thing is hard because you have a camera angle you're never going to see that line. You can maybe say that he's leaning forward, so his arm is offside, and you can score with your armpit. Just ask Liverpool fans because they love to be offside by an armpit. but ultimately, like, you had the game in hand. It wasn't the offside call that lost the game. It was what happened, the 20 minutes beforehand.
I know we need to break down this Eastern Conference finals before we, close this show. But I just want to throw the question out there because Robert Lilly, because I'm just going to keep calling him Robert now because I think it's fun. And he's only made it past quarterfinals one time, and it was a penalty shootout. And now he loses a 2-0 win after his defense that he is so known for gives up 2 goals. John, do you think he survives the offseason? Because it feels like they are reaching a real fork in the road where they have to commit to him for another year. Do you think even Pittsburgh fans want to see that?
From what I've seen, Pittsburgh fans are pretty in on what he's doing. It seems like Jeff Garner, who came in from Orange County as the president of the team this year, is sold on at least another season of Lilly. And I do think that they showed a lot in the playoff context where, yes, the regular season is always weird with these Lilly teams because he is just experimenting constantly. But they put in good performances in the playoffs. And yes, his mismanagement cost them at the end of the day. But I think he did enough to earn another year. I think just real quick, you invoked Dane Kelly. That's the most concerning thing for me, where his man management, for whatever reason, I mean, we've talked about him being a bit of a yeller, being a bit of a, what, he doesn't handle players well if they don't fit exactly into what he's imagining system-wise, and that's a problem.
Listen, if Dane Kelly wants to come down to Birmingham and link up with Enzo Martinez again, the USL will be a lot happier. I'm just saying. I do want just, before we move on to the finals, Eastern Conference finals, look, that one Jeff Bob Willie just throwing a hissy fit, it still gets me. I go searching through your Twitter all the time, John, just to watch it because it gets me.
I've forgotten about that.
It's my favorite. It might be my favorite moment that you've captured this year, even over the Alex Crognale flop. I just think that the Lily tantrum is just incredible.
I think that's the biggest snub from the first team All USL is that moment should have been like at least in the midfield.
Beautiful. Look, we got to talk about these Eastern Conference finals. I've said that 7 times now, but now we're actually going to do it. Tampa Bay, Lou City. At this point, it's just become who gets home field advantage every other year. We're just kind of deciding along the way. This is going to be a heavyweight matchup. This is a matchup that pretty much everybody had circled at the beginning of the year. They probably had circled at the end of last year, and it's coming to fruition. A couple of different characters that maybe we're used to seeing. Some characters that we expected maybe aren't playing. But in the end, this is truly one of the matches that you can talk yourself into both sides, and not even just both sides. You can talk yourself into both sides winning the USL Cup. Who do we think we have here?
So pick-wise, I had the Rowdies getting to the final and doing the whole thing from the get-go, and I feel slave to that pick, so I'm going with it. Based on the Memphis performance, am I confident in that? Not particularly, but I trust that Neil Collins is going to make the proper adjustments to give them extra solidity in the midfield. I think that you can't discount how good the Fernandez, Lacava, Guenzati trio is up top. If there's an area where I would be most concerned, it's with the wide areas where Aaron Guillen and Connor Antley are both very talented defenders, but they're both a step slow. And with Mushagalusa making those runs out wide with the wing back play of Perez and Dia, that could be problematic. But I think that The Rowdies did it last year, and they're going to do it again against Louisville City.
No Lucky this time.
That's true. Well, Lucky, yeah. Is he hurt?
He didn't play. He hasn't played at all.
He never play. He never plays, but he never played last
Yeah.
year. Other than that,
Well, that's true, but he always came in big matches, and I feel like I haven't seen him in like a month. I thought he was just down with injury.
no clue. They have so many strikers: Dos Santos, Grieg, etc.
Not wrong. Alan, who you got?
So, in full transparency, I put in the chat. I was like, "Can I change the Lou City?" And then John was like, "Well, I picked them from the beginning, and I think I also picked Tampa Bay to make the finals." So I was like, I feel shamed and just sticking with Tampa Bay. But I mean, these are two of the USL heavyweights, right? When people are talking like, I'm new to USL, what teams are good historically, and it's like it's these two teams are two of the most consistently good teams in the USL, and so I do think Lou City is good enough to get the job done. If I had to pick over again, I would probably have picked Lou City. But again, I John shamed me into sticking with my original pick, so I'm going to stick with Tampa Bay, and maybe that makes Louisville City fans happy because apparently when I pick things, I'm wrong, and then people were like, "You're wrong," and then they're like, "Please don't pick," but then please don't pick me in the future because I want you to continue to be wrong. It's a weird place to be, but it's a role I've been born to play, apparently.
Honestly, I picked Lou City here, and I'm just not comfortable with it because neither team looked convincing. This is the opposite of the Western Conference, where Colorado Springs is coming into the final, and it's like, wow, look at Colorado Springs. And San Antonio, it's like, wow, San Antonio still San Antonio. Incredible. They're so good. And now with these two matches, you're like, they both were on the struggle bus, and then they kind of did the thing. Tampa Bay kind of less did the thing. Lou City was gifted the thing. I don't know. I feel like I should stick with my Lou City pick, but if there's any matchup that's destined to go all the way to keeper shootouts, this is the one. I'm going to stick with Lou City at home. Probably going to be a packed house, or maybe not, because I do think I actually picked Tampa Bay for this week, because I think I saw rain on the horizon, and this is such a weird thing, but less home fans than normal if rain is coming. And then all the Tampa Bay fans, they drove all the way from Tampa Bay. They're not just going back. So maybe a little bit more of a away presence. I don't know. I'm overthinking it.
Right.
Both teams are going to win.
I mean, Lou City doesn't do well in the sunshine and doesn't do well in the rain. Also, I think the thing that's going to tip it over for me back to make sure I feel comfortable is Tampa Bay has two players in the first all league team, and Lou City only has one. And everyone knows that the all league first team is the biggest determining factor in everything. So 2-1. I mean, what's more soccer than 2-1?
This is true. Extra time. Tampa Bay probably gets both goals in like, I don't know, the 90th minute and probably 119 because that's how Tampa Bay usually beats Louisville. So you can convince me of that pretty easily. Cameron Lancaster comes in at 115. Like I said, gets his one goal, screws off, goes away again. He's not even hurt this time. He just wants to sit down. I don't know. Look, this is going to end up being a really, really fun finals. The official USL show poll does have Lou City versus San Antonio, which, hot take, guys, the 2-1 seeds are going to play each other. But the other ones that were just kind of big is people all think that San Antonio is going to go through, and it's a pretty close coin toss between Tampa Bay and Lou City. Those were the two that were really close. So I'd be really interested to see what happens in this one. The finals between Tormenta and Red Wolves are going to be incredible. Watch it be pure USL chaos, League One chaos, and I don't know. Tormenta wins like 7-0 because obviously that's just what they are going to do. But that it just feels like it's going to be a classic with just how those two teams are matching up, and any Lou City versus Tampa Bay match is a classic. And San Antonio and Colorado Springs, it should be fun. It should be really, really fun. I think we probably got the most interesting finals we could have asked for coming into this playoffs, and I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure we shared our picks for the West.
Oh, who do we have for the West?
San Antonio.
So I joked that I was going to put my lock up for charity and see who would like the winner would. I would pick the winner, and so people would be donating for the other team. But I'm going because of all of the love I got from Colorado Springs fans. I'm gonna lock San Antonio.
Congratulations, Colorado. Beautiful. Yeah, I took San Antonio. Hot take. I know. Insane idea.
But it's not unanimous among USL hosts. There is a Colorado Springs pick, so that does throw a wrench into things.
Who was it?
Believe. Let's see if I can find it. Gio picked the Switchbacks.
Oh no. Gio
had
such a good relationship with San Antonio fans, and then the one day that he doesn't, he's not even here. Wow.
It's all right.
I mean, we've all made San Antonio fans mad at some point. It is what it is. Oh, man. But I think that's it for the show. I know some people are probably looking for some all-league hot takes or who was a snub and all that kind of stuff. That might be an off-season conversation. With the playoffs going on, there's just not enough time.
I will share my ballot and give insight into what the voting process actually looks like in the coming days.
Is this going to be like a Hall of Fame ballot where, the same thing? Is it similar?
You basically only get a vote for like 6 people, and there's like a point system. I don't even know who else is on the panel. It's weird.
Well,
and the voting is you have to draw a portrait of each of the players, and so if you don't
they score
it
based on how close they look like. Exactly. So yeah, that was the reason why Connor Maloney didn't get in. He's too generic.
It is why Enzo made it pretty clearly. Like, I can draw that guy.
Right? Yeah, just get a red crayon out and you're good.
Shaved head, kind of man bun, big beard, all red. You got it. Yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't really. No, it actually kind of does explain why Openo didn't get in. If you asked me to draw Openo right now, he might be one of the least confident people I could probably draw.
Although to be fair, it is how former San Antonio keeper Matt Cardone got one vote. Is that someone thought that Enzo was Cardone, so they're like, I mean, he's not even playing, but I guess that's a vote.
Beautiful, just incredible stuff. I love this stupid league. Kyle Morton wasn't snubbed. Sorry.
Golden Glove means nothing. That's all I'm gonna say.
It should be gloves. They have 2.
I forgot this.
They have 2. This isn't even like Golden Boot where they have a preferred foot. I understand that. Goalkeepers catch the ball unless they're palming it like freaking Spider-Man. They have 2. It makes no sense.
I mean, unless it was Jim Abbott.
I don't think.
I mean, amazing pitcher. I used to when I was a kid, I used to pretend I was Jim Abbott pitching. Like I loved Jim Abbott. Like no joke. Like I was like trying to figure out how he did it, and so I would like pretend that I was Jim Abbott pitching. Like he was like legitimately, because he played for the Angels for a bit, and so like legitimately like one of my favorite pitchers to watch, because it was just like amazing what an athlete he was and what he's able to accomplish. And then I would try to like figure, I'm like, how does he? I'm like, and that's why I played in band.
Because you could never figure out how to take your glove off when you had a hand.
I wasn't even athletic enough to put my hand into the glove and take it out again. I was just like, this is clearly not for me.
Oh man. Now that we've gotten into MLB, I don't even know who's winning Phillies Astros right now. I'm a little bit mad that we didn't get Phillies Astros on Halloween. I feel like Philadelphia on Halloween would have been incredible, but whatever. What do I know? Stupid rain. Yeah, listen, I mean, I guess Memphis and Philadelphia, postponing important playoff matches because of rain. They have so much in common. Memphis is truly the Philadelphia of the Deep South or something. Alan, you have any final thoughts for the night?
Nope.
All right, fair enough.
You kind of stole my thing. I'm just feeling very brain dead right now.
Fair
it's just a strong endorsement of my picks for everyone who's listening.
Brilliant.
I endorse getting enough sleep. That's my shout at the end of this thing.
Hey. Let's see. I did have I guess interesting conversation with a student yesterday. She looked at me and she goes, "Who are you?" Even though I've been seeing the same student for the last 3 months. She's 6. Last 3 months didn't happen. Last week didn't happen. It's a new week.
That story you had on the last Hammering Down pod about the fat comment.
Oh my God, that freaking kid. I felt so self-conscious. I was like, Jesus Christ. Oh man, that freaking kid. He's a good kid, but whatever. Go listen to that one. I think that one's the Pittsburgh. It's in the middle of it. If it just skip through it, I don't care if you listen to the rest. But let's see. This week she's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm the music teacher." And she's okay. She goes, "Are you somebody's dad?" And I said, "No, I'm the music teacher." She goes, "Oh, do you have kids?" I said, "No." And she said, "So does that mean you have a mom?" Which now tells which now connects that if you have children, no longer have a parent. That makes sense. I told her, no, I have a mom. Told her my mom's name because she didn't believe me. And then she goes, "Well, do you have kids?" And I said, "No." And she looks at me and she goes, "So you have a mom, but she doesn't live here and you don't have kids?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "So are you just always lonely?" And then ran off. And I was like, all right. Thank you, 7-year-old. I appreciate it.
I thought she was asking an existential question, like, who are you? Like, who are you? Like the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland.
Now that I'm going to go to bed, it really is going to be in my mind, like, who am I? Who is my mom? Huh. But look, thank you guys so much for listening. Long Pod. We have, if you didn't listen to the Lexington video that we did with Coach Stocks, that one is on streaming platforms and it's on Goals TV. Go check that out. And we have some stuff planned, obviously, for finals. We have some off-season stuff that we're starting to work on. We're going to try to figure out some way to get Gio to try out for Union Omaha. We don't know how, but it's going to happen at some point. But hey, it was a long one. It was a good one. Thank you so much for listening. And for the last time of the night, unless Jasper has anything he wants to throw in one last time.
He's sleeping now.
Well, Alan's voice one last time.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show. This and every episode is brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network. Find podcasts and other written work at bgn.fm. Once again, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you guys again next week.